Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line.
Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line. I'm delighted to welcome Charles Vogl to the show today. So hello, Charles. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, I'm delighted to be here.
Just to let you know, we're going to be talking about leadership and creating cultures of community that make organizations stronger and more vibrant. And I've invited Charles because he's really very expert on this. He's an author, speaker and advisor, also trusted thought leader for the Google School for Leaders, and also whose work is used to develop leadership worldwide for organizations like Airbnb, LinkedIn, Amazon, and the US Army. So you sound amazing. Very, very impressive.
Well, it didn't happen overnight, Anne. I promise you that.
Did you enjoy the journey, though? Was it good fun?
My life has been so exciting. And for those who don't know me, I spent time in Southern Africa as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer. I spent a chapter of my life as a PBS filmmaker, making films, what we called high social impact.
Yeah.
And at one point, I studied religion on the East Coast of the United States. And that didn't make sense to anybody I knew.
Yeah.
It was interesting, perhaps, but there was no through line that made my career, as much as it was, make sense.
Yeah.
And now this place where all those experiences from, working with mothers, working to keep the kids healthy in Africa, to understanding how people find purpose and come together around shared values, all of that has converged in this chapter in my life where I can walk in a room with people who have high stakes of bringing people together around shared values and purpose. And I have all these experiences to bring into that conversation. And it's a ton of fun, really exciting, and often inspiring to see what people want to do and can to do when they're inspired to be together.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. And I love the idea of community, particularly in business. Obviously, most of my audience is business, so I always think business type. But it makes such a difference when you get that real community spirit in a team and when the leadership wants that to happen. I think it's a much more modern, progressive way of doing it compared to the traditional way, because for example, I started in the city in London a million years ago, obviously, but the feeling then just wasn't the same. They were great. It was fun. It was lovely, but it didn't have quite the same spirit of supporting each other and, really growing together, which I think it's beginning to change. But I know you work, I've just mentioned some of the places where you work, some of the people you work with. So it really is a vast range of organizations and totally different sectors. So do you see many differences in the reactions to leadership and the culture within these different organizations?
Well, I think, Anna, all of your listeners know that there are different levels of, I'll call it, maturity in leadership.
Yeah.
And maybe the lowest level is someone who wants to win themselves and dominate everyone else, and they'll just manipulate everyone around them to get what they want. And hopefully everybody's listening to you has matured past that, and they're a place they understand that when we're in leadership, it's about working with other people to create an outcome that we can't create by ourselves. And I think for people who are just being introduced to my work, we need to be really clear, especially with business leaders, how I define community. And I simply define community as a group of people who share mutual concern for one another.
Yeah.
And the people who approach me and want help in doing that, there's some group of people that could be an innovative team, that could be an executive leadership team, that could be line workers, say in healthcare, that are just getting beat up by the context.
Yeah.
And it's important for that organization that those people care about one another. So in a dynamic world where there are new challenges, there's resilience.
Yeah.
And you and I both know how much we want to go into hospital where that emergency team doesn't care about one another, don't know each other's names, right? Can't communicate clearly, and then they need to save our lives. We know exactly how much we want to be. Well, there are some companies that, especially that I've spoken to, they're literally global. And the decisions they make and the innovations they do make or don't make literally impact hundreds of millions of people. And at some point, those leaders become mature enough to realize, wow, I can't wake up every day and just figure out how I'm going to extract from people who are taking my money. We need to invest in them creating what I call community. And we can define my work by what it's not.
Yeah.
There are people in the last few years who have accurately noticed that we're in the loneliest era, maybe of human history. And they've noticed that we want community. And so they use the language of community really to help people manipulate.
Yeah.
And I call those people who say they're working in community, but they're really looking to manipulate and extract. And they just use the language. And so when we're learning, well, how do I knit together important relationships that make us more resilient in my organization? We need to notice who we're listening to. We're listening to people who are coming from a different field, say it could be marketing.
Yeah.
And they're just saying, we're going to call these people's members instead of users, subscribers, or employees and just declare community. Or are we going to do the things that actually knit people together so that you and I, Anna, show up in a hospital, that team is ready to go and cooperating?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a difference. But do you find, I mean, I know you like the art of belonging and that it makes people really feel valued and involved and effective. Why do you think emotionally and psychologically, why does this have such a positive result? I mean, I know what I feel, but I'm me, you know.
There are so many things we could say about this, Anna. What I will say here is that Marissa King out of the Yale School of Management wrote a wonderful book called Social Chemistry. Yeah. And in that she writes about the contemporary research which indicates if there is a silver bullet that reduces absenteeism, disengagement, and accidents, if there is one, it's having a friend at work.
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science. If I don't know how to do something and I have a friend at work, i.e. someone who I believe cares about me, I call them and say, how do I do this right? Instead of guessing and someone gets maimed or killed.
Yeah.
If I'm having a tough time emotionally or financially, and I don't know if I can handle another day at work, if there are friends there, I show up and I do the best I can. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
When we're in a leadership role, we need to understand if I want that magic bullet in my organization, if I want Anna to come to work on hard days, if I want Anna to ask for help when she needs help and it impacts others, I need to create a context where Anna creates those friends.
Yeah.
And when we have a group of friends who have relationships network together, I call that community.
Yes.
And there are certain things we need to create or make available such that Anna and your colleagues have those friendships. And I'll speak to one of them right here on the top, just so I'm not leaving you hanging. One of those is we need to give you what we call campfire experiences.
Yeah.
And the reason we call them campfire experiences, simply, I hope, Anna, everybody's listening to us right now, has at one point sat around a campfire and noticed when we got up to leave, we felt more connected to the people who were sitting there with us. And my guess, Anna, is you've been to at least 100 cocktail parties, maybe professional social networking, and you left every one not feeling more connected to somebody and not having one person you're looking forward to seeing again.
Yeah.
But you spent that. Am I right?
Yep.
So the question is, in leadership, how do we make sure that we're not spending time and money creating the equivalent of lousy cocktail parties, maybe with great cocktails?
Yeah.
And we're creating more of these campfire experiences. And for the purposes of teaching, we can look for three criteria. The first one is people are physically close enough to have an intimate conversation. Will they have it? I don't know. But if they're not physically close enough, if they're around a table of 10 or they're in a giant hall and not near each other, not gonna have it. The second one is they have permission to have the conversation they want to have, which is to say they're not listening to an expert at the front of a stage. They're not listening to a band that's so loud they can't hear each other. They're not trying to fulfill an agenda to get something decided. If Anna wants to talk about the power of her podcast, right,
Yeah.
then I get to listen about that. And the last one is all of the conditions that would distract from an intimate conversation that you want to have, Anna, I've handled it, which is to say there isn't somebody coming to the table every 10 minutes selling raffle tickets. Yeah. There isn't an auction going on so that you can have the conversation you want. There isn't a music blasting so loud we can't talk. And Anna, my guess is you've been to several holiday parties in your life where you're really excited to meet the people there and you could barely talk to them because somebody hired a band and play so loud you couldn't talk to them.
I know.
So one way to notice is, wow, you didn't respect the third criteria of a campfire experience, and you may have spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for your team to be in a place where they're never going to create the experience where they get more connected. So I'll just start with there. We need to notice, we need to create campfire experiences.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So for an organization to do that, I mean, what else can they do to really bring this idea into their business, to make people stronger, to make the whole atmosphere more vibrant? Because that's what it is, the energy between people.
Well, the first thing that needs to happen, Anna, is people in leadership need to acknowledge that the time where they don't see productivity.
Yeah.
But I'll stick with the metaphor we started with. But when those emergency department nurses and physicians are building relationships of mutual respect and kindness, that's valuable.
Yeah.
And we need to find time where we allow them to do that, maybe even, so to speak, on the clock, because when that tragedy comes in, those conversations created the grounded relationships that let them handle a dynamic world where they need to be resilient. Yeah. And if they never get it, right, then we're never going to have that grounding. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. We need to recognize that it looks like nothing's happening, but if you have a wizened, informed eye, you realize, no, this is the investment so that we are more resilient, more dynamic.
Yeah.
The second thing to happen is we need to physically schedule time.
Yeah.
So we know, Anna, there's research that shows just how many hours it typically takes to create a friendship. And I won't, it varies, but it's, far more than 30 minutes.
Yes.
Right. And if we have a larger team where they're going to be working together for a long time, we need to invest time regularly where they have that. And it can't just be, hey, go and get drinks. And here's why, Anna, that's not meaningful. Yeah. Right. And what makes it meaningful is when there's intention and we see what I call vulnerability.
Yeah.
We need to see leadership role modeling this investment to create those relationships. And there's a lot of research on what makes a good relationship and how people recognize that they have strong relationships. But we can start with, do you believe that other people understand you intellectually and understand you emotionally? So Anna, I know you're a mother and you're a podcaster. I know you've been in business. That's all intellectual, right?
Yeah.
And I know you more than someone who doesn't know those things.
Yeah.
But for you and I to have a relationship where you're going to call me, where you're in a bind, you don't know what to do, and it could be really embarrassing, you're also going to want to know, or at least believe that I understand you emotionally.
Yeah.
I understand what you're aspiring to do. You're inspired to do. That's emotion. What you're committed to creating. That's an emotion, to feel commitment, right? What you hope to impact. And if we never get there, either because we don't have a venue or nobody role modeled that and said, well, in this venue, in this organization, that's an okay way to relate, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Can I go one more thing?
Okay.
Can I offer your listeners one more on this topic?
Definitely, yes.
You and I know that immature leaders assume that the people working with them are there for what we call transactional reasons.
Yeah.
Give me my money, I give you my labor. You stop giving me money, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And indeed, some of them may be showing up that. But Anna, you and I know, because we're no longer punks at this, when people choose to spend their time with us, when there's somebody else in the world that will pay them for their time, right, or will be their customer, they want something more.
Yeah.
The least they want is respect and honor for their competence and their contribution. That's the floor, right?
Yes. Yeah.
When we recognize that our team's showing up because they want something more for their transaction, we can give it to them. We can give them the respect, not just lip respect, like, well, I technically thanked you, but they understand that we see how they're helping us become effective.
Yes.
And when they see that, now we have what I call a relational relationship instead of a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
And when you have strong relational relationships, and I know, Anna, I know you have these in your life, when things get rocky and all of a sudden that transactional relationship has to change,
yeah.
We're having a hard year. Let's say, I don't know, a pandemic wipes out our industry.
Yeah.
The relational relationships make us resilient. Yes. The staff might say, yeah, cut my wages. It's hard for me, but I understand the context. We're going to get through this together.
Yeah.
Right. Or I understand that Anna's family has someone who's sick at home. I'm going to show up for extra shifts because I'm going to make sure that our team gets through this instead of Anna can't be here. My shifts are my shifts. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Now, it takes a really mature leader to say, I want a team that resilient, and I'm willing to invest in things that less mature leaders don't see. You listed some of the organizations that have adopted my work and shared it around the world. You'll notice those are all iconic organizations in their field.
Exactly.
It doesn't surprise me that those are the organizations that have picked up my work and said, we are going to spend time and money to make sure that our leaders understand this at some level to make us more resilient and more dynamic than literally everybody else in the field. Are they effective at it? I can't be in every conversation to tell you, but just take note. It's not the struggling firms that you listed.
Yes, exactly. And for them to get to where they are, it's because they think differently and they value more important things. Well, in my opinion. So, okay, that's very interesting. And I mean, we've been talking very much business and leadership in business and things like that. But some of the values you've been talking about, some of the feelings are something that, for me, transform really well into private life, into the neighborhood, into the larger community. So how can we take those ideas and how can we spread them into the larger community, into private? I mean, you mentioned that you've helped with philanthropic things, whether it's helping someone create a philanthropic initiative or whether it's to spread it into the local community who are trying to set up, I don't know, a crowdfunding something for someone who's got a problem, or educational, what can we do? What's a way of actually transferring this so that more people can benefit and understand in their own life?
I'm glad you asked. So you threw a lot at me there, Anna.
Sorry.
I got to catch up.
I always do that.
All the principles that I talk about are very, very old. And I think of my work as simply distilling and translating wisdom that's literally been used for far over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And indeed, people who have studied, say, spiritual traditions recognize everything that I write about.
Yeah.
And that's why I never say out loud that I invented this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing what people much older than you and I have known for a long time.
Yeah.
Which is to say, all the principles I'm talking about have been knitting people together through tough times well before we had contemporary corporations.
Yeah.
So everything translates to spiritual communities, political communities, sport communities, parenting communities.
Yeah.
And when people don't want to spend a meaningful amount of time learning about the work that I have, I say, well, it all starts at the same place, Anna. It all starts with an invitation.
Yeah.
An invitation in my work is a request to somebody else to spend time together.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, at least in the United States, we live in a culture where for some reason people want to skip the invitation. In my life, an invitation is when somebody else knows that the invitor cares if they show up.
Yes.
If I invite you to something, Anna, and you don't know if I care if you show up, that's not an invitation. In our culture, there's this now dependence on what I call announcements.
Yeah.
Hey, Anna, there's going to be pizza at my house on Friday night. You should totally come. Right?
Yeah.
Totally different from Anna. It's been a tough pandemic. Anybody with parents knows what a struggle it is to raise healthy children in a world where we don't even know what the rules are to get together. My wife and I want to make sure that we have a community of parents supporting each other as we get through an unprecedented time in American history. We'd love you to come over and be friends with us on Friday. I think we're ordering pizza.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's a pretty involved invitation there, right? But the principle is there. After the second conversation, I care if you show up. Now, maybe you can't come, but you're taking care of a sick child. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you got an invitation.
Yes.
And the first thing I look for when an organization approaches me and says, we really want this group of people to get more connected, is I look for, well, what are you inviting them to? And the answer is not very much, almost never. Well, I'm not surprised why you're calling me and you're frustrated. Yeah. And if the answer is we're inviting to people to things, but none of them know that we care, we just announce that we're having drinks on Friday nights, well, I'm not surprised they don't care to come.
Yeah.
And the next thing I look for touches the earlier distinction I talked about, the campfire principle. Are you only inviting them to giant events where they're not going to have those criteria present because you've hired a band so loud or the tables are so big, whatever it is. So we said, how can we translate it? Starting at the beginning, there's a lot more. That's a lot more fun, but we can start at the beginning. Invite the people you care about to spend time together and make sure some high percentage of those events meet the 3 criteria of a campfire experience. Yeah. And if you need to, build a campfire. Yeah. It totally counts.
Sounds great.
It's not rocket science, Anna. And I don't want to tell you how long people have been sitting around fires.
Yeah.
Innovative breakthrough thought leadership. Sit around fires and talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's as old as history itself.
Right. Thank goodness there's me to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So, thank you. That's really been incredibly interesting. It's a really good insight because there's a lot of companies that I think they've got ideas sorry, my cat has come to join in. I think they've got ideas that they'd like to, but they just don't think through to the real emotional connection, the real supportive connection. So that's very, very interesting ideas. Any final piece of wisdom or key strategy that you think we should keep in mind that's going to help people going forward?
Well, I encourage people who talk to me for the first time to notice there are already people that you want to be closer with.
Yeah.
There are already people that you care about. And quite frankly, most people who they already care about haven't told the others how much they care about them. And I have this concept that I write about. I call the 3 a.m. friend.
Yeah.
And the 3 a.m. friends are the people you call if you have an emergency at 3 a.m. and you know they want the call.
Yeah.
My guess, Anna, is in your life, there are people that if they have an emergency, you want the call at 3 a.m.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And if they don't call you and you find out later they didn't call, that's a problem for you.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things that you can do, Anna, is you can think of those people, tell them you heard some fancy expert on community talking. And I told you to call those people and tell them, if you don't call me at 3 a.m. when you have an emergency, that's a problem for me because you're going to steal from me the opportunity to be the friend I want to be.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes.
And what you're doing is you're alerting them what they already have.
Yes.
A community that cares about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Yeah. I thought, that's got so much strength to it. And it's normally those type of people are the ones that they don't realize how much you want to help because you're so close. It somehow gets lost. And they're normally the ones that you really trust, the ones you can really rely on and can rely on you. They're the ones that need the support the most as well, because they're the open, loving people. So I think that sounds wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Where can people find you and how can they get in touch if they want to find out more?
So I'm very findable. My personal website is Charles Vogl. That's charlesvogl.com. And on that site, anybody who's inspired will find downloads that are free. You can download them and you can share them with your team if you want to start a conversation about how to knit together the people you already care about in your organization or your life. You'll also find a newly approved case study on my Google work over the pandemic. For the first time ever, Google approved a case study in my work and we were able to share it publicly. And so that's available for download if you're interested in how I work with that organization. And you'll also find articles that are smaller than my books. So that if you just want a bite of ideas, some of which we mentioned here, that you can bring to a team and start that conversation. And of course, you'll also find the 3 books I've written on the subject. Yeah. And those are the books that we use to develop the programs and the leadership and the organizations you mentioned earlier.
Oh, brilliant. So everything they can get on your website, all of it?
Everything is free for download, except the books, which are sold where books are sold.
Yeah, but no,
publishers don't like it when you give it away, so I don't do that. Although otherwise I would, because let's get this out there.
Lovely. Brilliant. Okay, so if they go to charlesvogl.com, they'll find everything. Lovely.
Yeah.
Charles, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been very, very interesting and I love the ideas. Hopefully several of my leaders will be coming onto your website to have a look because I've got quite a large community who are interested in more leadership and exactly things like that. Even this week, I've been speaking with 2 clients who've been talking about how can they improve those types of relationships. So I think this is a perfect interview for them to look at. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for coming and listening to Charles. Do go to his website and see you all again next week. Thank you.